This story is called St. Patrick and the Peddler. Long ago, there lived a peddler in the town of Ballymena, in the north of Ireland, near the coast. Every day, the peddler would leave his stone hut and walk the roads, selling his wares from a pack on his back. He sold needles and thread, pins, buttons, clay pipes, small mirrors. He would sell these wares to his neighbors, and they would pay for them with the few coins of their small savings. In this way, the peddler had money to buy food and clothes, shoes, and more wares to sell. In the evening, the peddler would return to his hut. He would cook his dinner in the great iron pot that hung from a hook in the fireplace. After dinner, the children of the village would gather round his fire, and he would tell them stories. "Céad míle fáilte," he would say. "1,000 welcomes to you. Come and sit down, and I'll tell you a story of St. Patrick." Patrick was a good man. He lived right here in Ballymena long ago when he was a slave. And he may have lived in a hut just like this one. "Would he have had a cooking pot like yours?" asked a little boy named Daniel. "He might have done," said the peddler. "Would his pot have had writing round the rim like yours does?" "I don't know," said the peddler. "What does the writing say?" asked Daniel. "I don't know that either," said the peddler, "for I have never learned to read. But you can go to the priests in the village and they will teach you to read. And then perhaps one day you will return and tell me what the words say on the rim of my cooking pot." Well, the days went by, and the peddler walked the roads, and he sold his wares, and he made his dinner, and he told his stories, until one terrible day when all the potato plants in Ireland began to die. And the people of Ireland began to go hungry. They began to use the coins of their small savings to buy food. And so there were fewer and fewer coins to buy the peddler's wares. He too had to use his savings to buy food. And then one day, the peddler came back from walking the roads, having sold not one thing. He found that he had but a bit of oatmeal left. And so he cooked it up. It made but a cup of food, hardly enough for a meal. The peddler ate it, but went to bed hungry. All night long he tossed and turned. Finally, late in the night, he slept and dreamt of St. Patrick himself. The saint stood in the doorway of the peddler's hut. He wore his long white bishop's robe, and his tall bishop's mitre sat upon his head. In his hand he held the shepherd's crook, that is the sign of the bishop's office. He spoke to the peddler in a voice like the breeze through the grasses. "Peddler of Ballymena, arise from your bed, go to the great city of Dublin far to the south. Stand on the bridge that crosses the Liffey River, and there you shall hear what you must hear." The next morning, the peddler woke up, recalling his strange dream. "I could never travel so far," Such a long journey, said the peddler to himself. And so again he took his pack upon his back and set out upon the roads. But once again he sold nothing all day long. He returned that evening to his hut and scraped the leftover oatmeal from his cooking pot. It was hardly enough for a meal. And so again, he went to bed hungry. He tossed and turned all night long. Deep in the night, he slept. And again dreamt of Patrick, who now stood in the middle of the peddler's room. The peddler spoke. St. Patrick spoke in a louder voice, like the call of the night bird. Peddler of Ballymena, arise from your bed. Go to the great city of Dublin, far to the south. Stand on the bridge that crosses the Liffey River, and there you shall hear what you must hear. Well, the next morning the peddler woke up shaking his head. I have never been out of the county. How could I ever walk so far? And again he took up his pack and went walking along the roads. Again he sold nothing, and in fact found himself giving away his wares. Here, he said to a young mother, take this needle and thread, you will need it to mend your baby's clothes. And so that night the peddler returned to his hut, having sold nothing, with no food in the house and no money to buy more. Well, said the peddler, if I am to die of hunger, at least they will find me clean when they come to fetch the body. And so the peddler drew a bucket of water from the well. He drank deeply, and then he washed his face and his hands, and he lay down upon his bed. His empty stomach rolled and rumbled. He tossed and turned all night long. Near dawn, he slept and dreamt again of St. Patrick, who now stood right beside the peddler's bed. He pounded his shepherd's crook into the floor of the hut. And he spoke to the peddler in a voice like the waves crashing upon the rocks. Peddler of Ballymena, arise from your bed. Go to the great city of Dublin, far to the south. Stand on the bridge that crosses the Liffey River, and there you shall hear what you must hear. Well, the peddler leaped from his bed. He pulled on his boots. He grabbed his pack and hurried out the door and headed south just as fast as he could walk. Day after day he walked, until at last he reached the great city of Dublin, just as the sunrise was jeweling all the windows. He made his way to the bridge that crosses the Liffey River, and there he stood looking down upon the waters flowing over the golden sands. And then he turned and began to watch the people as they crossed the bridge. It was early, but there were already many people moving about. From time to time, he would cross from one side of the bridge to the other. But all day long, no one approached him, no one spoke to him. At the end of the day, as the sun was sinking behind the church towers, the peddler noticed across the street a man came out of his shop. It was a butcher. The peddler watched the butcher wipe his hands upon his apron. The butcher crossed the street and walked onto the bridge and right up to the peddler. I have been watching you all day. Are you waiting for something? Are you looking for someone? I do not know, said the peddler. I had this dream. Oh, dreams, muttered the butcher. I know all about dreams. For 3 nights in a row, I have had the same dream. St. Patrick himself has come to me and said that I must travel far to the north to a town called Ballymena, and there I must dig in the floor of the fireplace of a tiny stone hut, and there I will find what I must find. As if I would travel so far for the sake of a dream? Not likely. And grumbling to himself, the butcher left the bridge and returned to his shop. The peddler stood for a time in the rosy glow of the sunset, smiling to himself. And then he too left the bridge and began the long walk north. He walked and walked for days as quickly as he could, until at last he returned to Ballymena and his own stone hut. He went right to the fireplace. He took down the great iron pot and set it in the middle of his room. Then he took his spade and began to loosen the stones that lined the floor of the fireplace. When he had removed the stones, he began to dig in the dirt of the floor. He dug and dug until, ching, his spade struck something. He continued to dig until he had unearthed a great iron pot, very much like his own, only this pot was full of gold, old gold, cups and rings and coins. Just as the peddler was lifting out that great pot of gold, in rushed the little boy Daniel. "Oh, peddler, you're back. We have missed you. Where have you been?" "I have been getting what St. Patrick promised me," said the peddler. "And I have been getting what you promised me," said Daniel. "I went to the priests, and they have taught me to read. Shall I read the words around the rim of your cooking pot?" And bending down, Daniel brushed his fingers over the words and read, "Beneath this pot lies another, even better." Well, the peddler took that pot of gold, and with it, he bought food for his neighbors and for himself. He bought himself a horse and cart. He got himself a wife and children of his own. And in the evenings, after dinner, the children of the village would join his own around the fire, and he would tell them stories. "Aye," said the peddler, "St. Patrick was a good man. He lived right here in Ballymena. And if he were to come again, he would find here Cade mille fortune, 1,000,000 welcome."